To the United States, where Democrats have expressed outrage after the U.S. Senate on Saturday failed to convict former President Donald Trump of inciting the mob that stormed the Capitol last month. The vote fell short of the two-thirds majority needed for conviction on the charge that he incited the insurrection that left 5 people dead, forced lawmakers to flee, and put his own vice president in danger while overseeing the certification of President Joe Biden's election win. Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnells, who voted not guilty in the trial, offered scathing remarks about Mr. Trump after the verdict. The lead House manager, Jimmy Raskin, who headed the group of 9 Democrats who prosecuted the case, said that nothing would have convinced the reluctant Republican senators. House manager Joaquin Castro said acquitting Trump now opened the door to the possibility of further political violence. And joining me now to discuss this is global affairs analyst Ibidolakbo Ajayi. He joins me via Skype from Ohio, United States. Good to have you join us, Ibidolakbo Ajayi. So many issues arising from this acquittal, but let me first get your reaction to the acquittal and now to the statement coming from different parties that probably the impeachment manager should have called on witnesses. All right, we are having an audio challenge that we can't hear you, Ibidolakbo Ajayi. We'll come back. All right, we're going to come back to that story once we have it. All right, so I understand that we do have the audio right now. I don't know if you had my question earlier. What do you make of that impeachment acquittal?
I expected that result. It should not have been a surprise to anybody watching the events that the Democrats will never get to the 17 votes that they needed from the Republican side. They were going to get a handful, and they did get 7 Republican senators voting with them to convict Donald J. Trump, but they needed an extra 10, and they were never going to get that. To your question about whether they should have called witnesses, it will have just dragged the process all over the place, because what then will happen is that opens the door to the other side as well to call witnesses. So in a situation whereby they were hoping to wrap up the whole trial by the weekend that just went by, this could have dragged on for months. Certainly, the U.S. President Joseph R. Biden did not want that. He wanted this done and out of the way, and I didn't think the senators on both sides had any appetite for a protracted trial either.
But with or without witnesses, do you think that the Republican senators would have voted differently?
No, the outcome was never in doubt. The influence that Donald Trump has on his party is still very strong. A lot of them are going to be up for the election next year in 2022 during the midterm elections, and basically they're all looking at the primaries and wondering if this man is going to come after them should they vote to convict him. So you saw some of the senators that voted to convict him are actually some that will not be standing again for election. A couple of them are retiring. So it was a real gamble by those guys, because what Donald Trump has decided to do is to come back into politics, and you can bet that he will be going after those that voted to convict him in this trial. So it was never in doubt that they were going to acquit him.
So you talked about former President Trump wanting to come back to politics again. He released a statement immediately after that acquittal. He talks about actually returning to politics, saying he has their plans in the works. But that statement sounded like he thinks he was vindicated by the Senate. That acquittal, was it a vindication of President Trump?
It was not. He actually, if you were to go into the court of public opinion, it was a damning conviction for Donald Trump. But this is a man that never thinks he does wrong. Even when he was tried during the first impeachment, he came out and believed that he was vindicated. He never sees himself as doing wrong. So this was not a vindication for him. This was more of a vindication of the Republican Party that looked as if they were still very much in fear of the power that this man wields over the party. So it cannot, he will say he's vindicated, but everybody knows that he had every hand in the insurrection that happened at the Capitol on January 6th.
And I like that you talked about the Republican Party, the 7 senators who voted against President Trump. Now, one of them, which is Lisa Murkowski, is the only person who will be seeking for re-election in the midterms. But someone like Ben Cassidy, who is not even seeking for re-election, has been censured by his party. We also saw that statement coming from the Senate Minority Leader, Mitch McConnell, where he voted to acquit President Trump, but he did say that he believes that what President Trump, he did rebuke President Trump for his actions. What do you make of that? Because one would have thought that by now, the hold of President Trump over the Republican Party would have at least, subsided since he's no longer president.
Well, Mitch McConnell is a crafty old fox. He pretty much, in my opinion, played his Republican Senate colleagues, and he knew very well that Trump did this. And if you recall, just before all this happened, he had been signaling that he was open to Trump getting convicted. But at the last minute, he switched and said he was going to vote to acquit him, and then came out on the floor of the Senate to make that statement, which pretty much agreed with what the impeachment managers were saying. So basically, it was like he led all the senators, down to the water and refused to drink with them. But what he's doing, basically, he's hoping that, with his statement opening up the potential for a criminal suit against Donald Trump, he's hoping that he wouldn't have to deal with the repercussions of if he had voted to convict him. He wants maybe other openings whereby Donald Trump will be dragged and discredited, and he was hoping that maybe at some point somebody will bring a criminal suit against Donald Trump. What they're hoping for right now, those that don't want Donald anymore in the party, they're hoping that something else engages him that makes him unable to partake in the U.S. politics. But that's a long shot because this man carries a lot of weight. He still has a strong base in the Republican Party, and they all should have just stood together and just agreed that he made an attempt on their lives on January 6th, but they failed to do that.
Will that have any effect? I know you do not have a crystal ball, but the midterms is in 2022. Will that have any impact on the Republican Party as a whole? Do you think, what the senators are looking at is to be able to at least regain control of the House in 2022. Do you think that this vote to acquit President Trump will have any impact on that?
It could, but when you think about it, Donald Trump, as president, lost his presidency. He lost the Senate, and they did not regain the House from the Democrats. So those of them that are still believing that the party needs to go the way Donald Trump is leading them are going to hope that he can energize his base to stand up and come out and vote in the midterm elections and get a lot of them elected back into the Senate and also into the House. Time will tell, because right now the pulse of the country is that people don't want to go back to the politics of Donald Trump. That's why Biden had more than 7 million votes during the general election than he did. So they're hoping that this acquittal will help to re-energize the base and basically get them over the hump when it comes to the elections next year. It's a real long shot. The Democrats are not going to be sitting still. We expect to see perhaps some states trying Donald Trump for election issues. Georgia has already indicated interest in doing that. He has cases pending in New York State. So there's going to be a lot of things that we're engaging, but for the Republicans, they really need to determine what party they want to be going forward, because they still have this base also that believes so much in QAnon conspiracy theories, and that aligns more with Donald Trump, and there are those that want to be rid of all of that and become the grand whole party all over again. It is seriously an internal war going on in the party, but time will tell who wins that eventually.
So I want to talk about the legal cases, like you mentioned earlier, that President Trump will have to face even after this acquittal. You talked about the one in Georgia, where the Secretary of State, or I think the Attorney General, Brad Raffensperger, is now pushing for election fraud, issues around election fraud when it comes to that infamous phone call that we had some time ago. There is also the tax issues in New York, and there is a defamation lawsuit against him by 2 women. Is he likely to survive all of this? And even if it doesn't, what damage could they do?
The chances are you really won't see a former president of the United States going to prison. It's unheard of, but then this is a man that has now been impeached twice, which is happening for the first time in U.S. history. But what will likely happen is that all these cases that will come up against him, and I believe there will be quite a few, will distract him enough to make him rather irrelevant in how things goes in U.S. politics. That is my prediction, that he will just be so engaged with a whole lot of cases and suits coming after him that he won't have enough time to be a factor. But in the interim, expect him to start a tour, expect him to go campaigning and talking about how vindicated he is, and a whole lot of attacks against those senators and those members of the Congress that voted against him during this impeachment trial.
Let's talk about, we've talked about the future of the Republican Party. Let's talk about the future of America after this. One of the Democratic senators did say that white supremacy has been enabled in America because of this acquittal. Do you see how this sort of gives power to the white supremacists, or gives them that room to believe that, look, they own America? Because President Trump did say one of those statements he made that, he called them the people who built the nation. Do you think that they have been enabled and emboldened by this acquittal?
They probably have. I mean, we saw a whole lot of that during Trump's presidency. It has never been this way in the United States. They've been emboldened so much over the past 4 years that, they don't hide it anymore. They're very brazen about it. The only thing that we can pray for is that this current president will find a way to bring the country together, because what this acquittal has done is basically set a precedent that maybe in the future we might have another president that could incite, or another politician that has a strong base that could incite an insurrection and get away with it. Because pretty much, these white supremacists will feel like, they got away with it, Trump got away with it, although a lot of them are going to go to jail, and they will be looking back and wondering why the man they love so much, is not going down with them. But then they are the ones that believed all of the lies that Donald J. Trump sold them. But yes, we need to be worried, but the hope is that President Biden will be able to find a way to bring everybody together in the United States, at least to some extent, where this can hopefully become a thing of the past.
Absolutely. A lot of things to watch out for in the United States, whether from President Trump, the Republican Party, the Democrats, in the coming days. Ibidolakbo Ajayi, Global Affairs Analyst, thanks for talking to us.
Thank you.